Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the show dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. This podcast aims to cut through the noise, the ignorance, and the complexity of 21st century living by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. On Mondays, we post interviews, and on Sundays, we post sermons, which are more personal and revolve around whatever I'm musing on that week. No episode of this show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time, and you never know when that might be for you. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. In this show, you'll get the full range. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, and sacred activism. We can learn a lot from each other, and we need each other. You can expect courageous conversations when you tune into the show that will range from insightful, uplifting, and illuminating to uncomfortable and sometimes even confrontational. But no matter what, they'll always be filled with compassion and curiosity. Each episode invites you, with a ton of love and respect, to listen with your heart and mind wide open. If you love what you hear or find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and now for today's show. This is episode number 243 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, and another dear friend of mine is joining us today, Monisha Chandanani. Monisha is an intuitive leadership coach and the founder of See.Love.Choose, a system for conscious creation. I was really touched by the big truth that Monisha shared with us today, and that's humility is the way. In this conversation, we explored the value of practicing, being alone versus feeling lonely, how the goggles you wear influence what you see, mindful awareness and how you can't transform what you don't see, consciousness, how creation works, and much, much more. We also got real about how judgment and projection show up in our own lives, which, as a fellow human being, I'm sure you'll be able to relate to. The show notes for this episode can be found at untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -243. Again, that's untameyourself.com/TT-243. All right, everybody, welcome back to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. I'm obviously your host, Elizabeth D'Alto. And today we're here with my friend Monisha Chandanani. I love saying your last name, but I bet people mess it up all the time, huh?
All the time. I was just going to applaud you for the way that you spoke it. Yeah. Yeah.
So first question, what is a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
That humility is the way.
Ooh, say more about that.
Yeah. So I've had a beautiful, big blind spot revealed to me in the last month or so that has really shown me where I've been showing up in my life thinking like I know, that I know what's going on. And really just to get into the story a little bit, because I think it's significant and worthwhile. The blind spot has been around like the most challenging relationship of my life, which has been with my sister. And I have been sitting in the seat of thinking that I knew so much about how she's showing up and her behavior, and ultimately projecting all of my bad behavior onto her. And that seems so obvious, right? It's 101 of the personal growth path, that what we see in others is what lies dormant within us. But I have to tell you, it was a big blind spot because I felt so justified in my behavior. So sitting back into this seat of humility and really understanding that I do not know And I say sitting back because it really feels like a backward seat, and letting the wisdom of God, source, spirit, consciousness, creator, whatever it is that you believe breathes life into existence, take the lead, has been such a beautiful, expansive, glorious place to sit. So
I love this. And I want to ask you a question about projection, because I don't know that I think that's certainly one aspect / definition of projection is what we see in others lies dormant within us. And I don't need you to agree with me, by the way. But I also think that sometimes it's a matter of like the thing that is a trigger is just showing us, guiding us to a blind spot or like something we need to look at. But what I'm saying is it's not like tit for tat, right? It's not like, well, you do this, so I must have that within me. Like, I know we all hold all things within us, but do you get what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of ways that, at least in my experience, that the truth reveals itself.
Yeah.
And in this instance, it was a very linear reflection.
Got it.
Not to say that all reflections show up in that way, to your point.
Yes.
But this case was so linear that it was like,
Isn't that amazing that, we're going to get into what you do and how long you've been doing your work. And like, you're someone who I consider to be at a level of like mastery within your craft. How cool is it that you can still have such a humbling moment?
Oh my God. I can't even tell you. I feel like new breath. I feel anew because now I feel like I've been suspended in the air, and I have this illuminated light that was in the darkness where I could not see myself. And now I have all of this new material to work with where I sit in the beginner's seat, and it feels so good and so humbling and so necessary and so timely. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah. I appreciate your attitude towards growth, right? Because something we talk about on the show a lot is the idea of how growth happens in a spiral, right? Hopefully spiraling up. We'll revisit some of the same stuff, or we'll revisit things from a different, higher perspective. Right. But we always have two choices when that happens. We could beat ourselves up and be like, this again, I thought I was over that. Or someone can respond the way you're responding right now and being like, oh my God, I'm so grateful. This is so humbling. I'm getting to see an aspect of myself I never saw before. This is amazing.
Well, that I will give to the years of practice.
Yes.
Because I've been in this position so many times, seeing something new, revealing something, a blind spot being pulled into the light where I wasn't kind to myself, where I did beat myself up, where I was in such a deep place of self-hate and self-judgment that kept me stagnated and stuck in the process of transformation. I have just learned through trial and trial to be more kind and loving. And ultimately, the other side of this, whatever this new freedom will be for me, I know that it's so good that I am willing, joyfully, truly joyfully willing to dive deep into the darkness, because on the other side is more light.
Yeah. So amazing. And I appreciate a good friend of mine, Lauren Alta, when she was on the show, she actually calls it shadow diving. And so I like that you said that too, because it's basically what it is. You're like, all right, there's not really shadow dipping your toe in the pool.
No, you can't get a taste. You go all the way in, and it's very worthwhile to do so. It's very efficient.
Yeah, so worthwhile. And so I'd love to know a little bit more. How long have you been practicing? What have you been practicing? Can you illuminate us on your path a little bit?
Thank you for asking. So, when people ask me that question, how long have I been practicing what I'll just say inner work? I just say all of my life. And because I've just been introspective by nature from birth, I've always gone within to understand and to study self, to understand the whole. By understanding the nuances of my own being, it helps me resonate with the nuances of others. So, always. As far as my professional career, I've been a career intuitive for 8 years. My background is actually in Chinese medicine, and what led me to Chinese medicine was what I call my spiritual awakening. And so when I was 23 years old, I had 3 of my friends pass away within a 6-week period of time, and they were all in different communities. And within that deep, deep, deep space of grief, of feeling like rocked to my core, like putting on that same black dress for the third time, it just like, it blew me away inside and out. But what I realized and what I experienced with that deep, deep, deep grief was this like incredible illumination of light where I felt not alone. I felt the presence of whatever it is that gives us life. And my life has never been the same since. And from that point forward, I've just been a seeker of a different kind, where my center of life has really truly been about happiness and service. And that's what's led me to who I am today and what I do now.
And I can speak to the power of your intuitive ability. So for people listening, I had connected with Monisha. When was it? Do you remember the day we went on that walk in San Diego?
Yeah. I don't actually remember.
I don't either. I think it was like last fall. It was
somewhere in the fall.
For sure over a year ago. And
right.
I remember having one of those conversations where you meet someone and it's just like instant soul family. It's like worlds open up. You don't know how long you've been walking or talking, and you're like, yes, yes, yes. And you just kind of like see each other, get each other, click in, and you're like, yes, this is so good. And then I literally just didn't see you or talk to you again for the most part for like a year. Which I was my own, like what you were describing as like humbling yourself was basically my entire 2017. So I totally get that. But what's cool is when we reconnected, Monisha's like, I'd love to gift you a session. Like I just like would love for you to experience what I do. And I was like, all right, cool. And I don't know if did I tell you this? Like I don't do sessions with intuitives.
I love that.
I just don't. I had, but I hadn't since, I want to say maybe 2015. Mm-hmm. But I was like, yeah, it was a hell yes for me. Like I checked into my inner discernment. And what was cool is during that, and I don't mind sharing it, one of the things that you helped me to see was I was still holding on to like a kernel of what had been like a massive like boulder of anger. And you gave me this massive permission because you were like, that anger, like you're using that story and that anger to like iron out this actually much deeper, like core wound kind of issue that's really ready to go. And I was like, what? Because so much in personal growth and development, when we hear someone referencing a story, it's like, well, that's just a story. And it's like, you need to let that shit go. And you were like, no, you need to work it out. And take your time. And the anger is actually a tool. Like you literally said that. It's like helping you like uncrinkle, like iron it out. And literally within 3 weeks, I had this shift. And I was really able like to let that little kernel go. Just like kiss it goodbye and be like, cool. As well as the story. Like that was just like a total catalyst to this like, because I hadn't seen it and I hadn't considered it that way. So I just want to say thanks, and you're amazing.
Aw, thanks, girl. My pleasure. Thank you for letting me see you.
Yeah. And so I want to ask you to maybe elaborate or share whatever perspective you want to share on that, my experience of like kinder, like healthier experience of what story is and how it can serve us.
Right. Well, I think everything ultimately is a gift. Everything. And whatever we've attracted into our world is here for us to grow and to experience more joy and happiness and connection. So for that reason, that's the lens I'm often looking through. There's so many ways to work in the field of intuitive energy, right? I mean, there's so many ways that people show up in that space. And for me, when I enter that field, it really is in a place of how can I serve this person, how move through me in a way that can really allow this person to be the fullest expression of themselves. So I'm looking at everything that's coming towards you as a gift. That's the lens that I'm looking through. So that has something to do with it. Like the goggles you wear influence what you see. Yeah. And so from that perspective, the stories that we create, the things that are around us are there to serve us. So if we look for why, then none of it is to your detriment, or none of it is negative or bad or wrong. It's there for a reason. So I'm actively looking for that reason. So emotions like fear and anger and all of these things that get such a bad rap are in such deep service to us. So why not use the tools that we have attracted into our world as tools to be able to give us the liberation that we seek?
Yeah.
So I think perspective is key, truly, to look for the gift. And anger is one that gets the most bad rap. But when we truly sink into what anger is, like when we feel it in our body, there is a vibration of heat that comes with anger. And heat is the greatest catalyst for change. Let's bring it back to chemistry. If you want to change one state into another, water into vapor, what do? You provide heat. So when anger arises, when irritation or any annoyance, any thread that is connected to the label of anger comes into our beings, one, thank goodness things are about to change. So that's amazing. But we can start to use it and direct it in a way that can catalyze the growth that we seek.
Yeah, that's amazing. I appreciate that perspective. So your system that you work through that you have created / put together is called See.Love.Choose. And I love the way this works. I love the way you explain it. So can you just do that?
Yes, thank you so much. So see is the practice of mindful awareness. We cannot transform what we do not see. Me with my sister, what can I do? How could I be more loving and kind and generous to this situation, to this woman that I deeply, deeply care for, if I couldn't see that I was being an a-hole? Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, you can't transform what you don't see. So first, we need to see clearly what we're doing. So see is the practice of mindful awareness through thought, word, action. Who are we? Who are we being? What are we putting into the context of our lives? From there, as we know, as we spoke to just earlier, when we start doing the work of inner transformation, we're going to see things that we don't like. We're going to see things that are hard to swallow. We're going to see things that we judge about ourselves. And that's where the practice of love really comes in, because the practice of love is loving and accepting who we are in our wholeness, loving our shadows and loving the light, because there's purpose and beauty in all of it. And the real benefit of being loving and kind to ourselves as we discover these nooks and crannies of our being is that by loving what we see, we actually integrate those broken pieces back into our wholeness. And that's some good shit.
It is some good shit. So wait, before you tell us about Choose, can you talk about how love and acceptance are inextricable?
The way I will respond to that is that by first accepting whatever it is that's in front of us, being really in a place of like neutral acceptance, we open the door to receive the gift of what it is that is in front of us. And once we receive the gift through our accepting lens, we get to love, like truly, madly, deeply love what we see. And that is extraordinary.
Yeah. So what do you think, if we're not in full acceptance, what are we doing? We might be calling it love, but it's not love. Trying to love? Tempting?
Yeah. What would I call that? Faking it till we make it. I mean, which is okay too, but if we are in a lack of acceptance, we're in some sort of rejection or judgment. Ultimately. Or I see this a lot. When we start to see clearly who we are, we just want to fix it. And so instead of like being like loving and accepting, we just want to change.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. And it's really easy to bypass this portion of love because it's like, oh, I see I'm being an a-hole. I'm just going to stop being an a-hole. However, you miss this beautiful portion in between as to why that is a part of your personality, why this has been a part of your psyche. And when we pause to be loving and accepting to that part of ourselves and we integrate the gift into our wholeness, there's nothing to like forgive anymore. Not to say that forgiveness doesn't have a place within the realm of transformation, but it just all clicks and we feel our true divine wholeness.
Yeah. And I think this is an amazing distinction, and why I'm sure your system works so well is because you'll hear people often say things like everything is a choice. But when you are saying, but see first and then love and then choose, you're able to make higher quality choices, I'm sure. So I'll let you go into that part, but I just think that's really, really important. And I can always tell when someone has said something that I know I'm going to get messages and notes and comments about, and people are like, damn, that was such a good point. Because people do. People want to go, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. I must fix it now. And the energy behind the fixing is this is wrong and this is bad and judgment, instead of hey, I love myself anyway, and I'd rather not do this anymore.
I call it the 180 effect.
Yeah.
We see something we don't like, we want to be the 180 of it. But that's actually injecting self-hate into your field. It's not See.Hate.Choose, See.Love.Choose. Really, at the most subtle of levels, that's self-hate. And people really don't like it when I say those words, but it's true.
Yeah. Like,
it's okay to own that we have self-hate. Okay. So, go ahead.
No, choose. Yeah. We're up to choose.
Choose. Let's go to choose. So what's so wonderful when we've taken the time to see ourselves clearly and be in an accepting and loving place with what we see, that does really integrate those broken portions that we perceived as broken into our wholeness. They illuminate them into light, and then it's all good again. And from this really clean slate of the vibration of love, choosing from there becomes fun. It becomes a playground. It becomes where we're co-creating with the divinity. It becomes what people talk about as like manifestation or attracting to you and the law of attraction, all those things. Those models work in the space when you cleared your field to receive what you desire. But if we're all clogged up with this self-judgment and self-hate, we might use these techniques of manifestation, but they won't work because we don't have any place for them to come into. So choose is the practice of conscious creation. And that's really what I call See.Love.Choose. It's a system for conscious creation. It's to be awake and aware and conscious of how creation works. And creation works through the lens of love. We make love to make babies. That's how life is birthed. So when we are walking through the world with a loving lens, we have full power to create whatever we desire. That's what we get to choose.
This is so funny. Have I ever told you there's 4 topics in Wild Soul Movement, and the last one is love and creation?
No, but it doesn't surprise me.
It's so funny. So funny.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this, and I'm really curious. I'm going to take a total turn here. Yeah. But I know you work with, and we don't have to get into who your actual clients are, but I know you actually work with some companies and some teams and some corporations. And I'm curious, just because I'm nosy, how do you frame, do you call yourself an intuitive? Do they know that that's what you're doing? I feel like that's not, I would think that that's not like corporate speak. We're hiring this career intuitive person. Are you just an executive coach when you go into that and they don't know what you're doing, or how does that work?
You're so good. Well, I call myself an intuitive leadership coach.
Okay.
And that works. Great. It works in the industry of corporate because I think the leadership coach part lands well. Mm-hmm. But that's truly what I am and how I show up in the world. And I guide through the system of See.Love.Choose, but ultimately, I really enjoy working with social entrepreneurs and executives that are really making positive change in the world. And I say that, and that actually filters my clientele. So I don't need to explain myself to these folks because they want what I have and I want what they have. There's a really beautiful synergy because their focus is on making the world a better place, and they understand that they need to make themselves the best inner place that they can be in order to serve on a wider scale. My clients are the best. I love you all so much.
You're like, in case you're listening, I love you, Mom.
No, it blows me away. I'm in awe of the courageousness, especially those that are in corporate, they're just going for it. But I also will say that, we're living in a different climate. This stuff isn't that woo-woo and weird anymore. Yeah. People speak about the universe mainstream a lot. So I think there's just a general curiosity where people are more awake and aware to the magic of the universe, and where science and spirit are coming together right now is very solid. And a lot of people up in like the Bay and like the tech industry get that, even though they might be in very technical companies, there's a rise of understanding that the more that we know about science, the more we actually know about spirit too. So there's an acceptance in that.
So you've been doing this work for a number of years, and I'm curious, just literally some opinions or projections, like positive projections in terms of how is leadership evolving right now?
That's a great question. Well, first and foremost, I am really just seeing a rise of a desire to lead authentically. The masks are being thrown away. People just really want to show up and be who they are. Mm-hmm. And that is awesome. And I think there's just a general care for humanity in a new way, because there's so much, like, we're living in such a effed up climate in so many ways. Like all of these, like the nooks and crannies of the underbelly and the diseased parts of humanity are really showing up for us to look at. And so leaders are rising to help transform that in the only way possible. Well, one of the ways possible is through a loving lens. And in order to do that, we really do need to be in deeper alignment with who we authentically are and lead from that place. So really, like, it sounds cheesy, but like heart-centered leadership. I'm seeing a lot of that. A lot of that.
Yeah. And I'm curious, do you have, so I always like to be aware of our listenership that like not everyone is in like New York or LA or the Bay Area. Not everyone's even in the United States. And so I'm curious in terms of, are you working with any clients right now, or have you, that have been in places that are not in the, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say more like proactively conscious areas that like people know. Mm-hmm. Progressive is probably a better word. Maybe less progressive areas of the country.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely, I mean, I'm working with progressive people, but I do have clients that are in less progressive areas, but, cool. Yeah, so that does happen. But they themselves are quite open, which is nice.
Got it. That's awesome. Yeah. So I want to talk about consciousness, because I think this is a term that gets tossed around, adapted, self-proclaimed, and it's actually quite scientific and psychological and can be linear, as vast as it is. So when you work in terms of consciousness, how would you describe it? How would you define it? How would you explain it? What's the role that it plays in your work?
Yeah. So I often use the terms God, source, consciousness together, because when I tune into what is consciousness, it is literally the everything. Like everything is birthed from consciousness. So for me, they're one and the same. If you're a scientist and you're speaking about consciousness in the terms of the mind, that's the vocabulary and that is the language that makes sense. If you are, in the world of spirit, maybe it's God or it's source or it's universe or it's energy, whatever it may be. So for me, there's the macro way of tuning into what consciousness is that feels to me like source and creation. And then we also talk about being conscious in a way that, again, is just like an illumination. It's like it's a way of being awake and aware to what is beyond what we might see in the nitty gritties of our life.
Cool.
So,
Thank you. Mm-hmm. What do you think, or what do you observe to be the difference and then the relationship between awareness and knowledge?
God, that's a good question. It's so funny because I'm in such a deep seat of humility right now that knowledge.
You're like, what's that?
Literally.
None of us know anything.
Literally, that's like where I'm at right now. But what I will say is that, to me, being awareness is sitting in the seat of the observer. It's taking a step back and watching what is with a detached lens. So being aware rather than being in the center of something, like living something through, like I'm aware that I am angry rather than being in the anger. There's a space and there's a distance. Like that to me is awareness, mindful awareness. Knowledge is to me something that feels like known or true, something that is known or true. And again, I'm really in this place of humility around this. I feel like knowledge changes. It's an ever shifting reality based on the seat of awareness that we're sitting in.
I love that because here's why I asked, and I didn't want to influence your answer in any way, but I'll explain. Mm-hmm. It's just something that I've been observing the relationship, because I had been in a community for a while where people had a lot of knowledge, but were far less aware than they thought they were, for sure. And to me, that was demonstrated through this like absolute oblivion to the impact they were actually having on others. So I'm like, these people are smart, like they know a lot of things, but there's a real lack of awareness. And to me, that disparity was really problematic. And this was in a specific context. So I'm curious, in your work and just being out about in the world and doing the work that you do, your own inner work, what do you think are the biggest threats to expanding that mindful awareness?
Ego, thinking that you know, and judgment.
Yeah. And do you have, it's probably your system, See.Love.Choose. I love unpacking judgment because it's juicy.
Yeah. Well, judgment exists just like everything else exists.
Yeah.
So I'm not a hater on judgment, just like I'm not a hater on anger and a hater on any of it. It's like it just being aware that we're judging. And one of the things that I really encourage for myself and my clients in the love portion is to be loving towards our judgment. So, okay, I see that I'm judging. Now let's not judge ourselves for judging. But even if we are, okay, that's okay too. But get to the outer layers of the judgment and give it a big old hug. It's like, it's okay. So I think judgment exists just like everything else exists. It just happens, but our relationship to it is what matters. Yeah. So, and like, again, like everything has a gift. And as we start to be more loving and kind to the places that we are judging, discernment births. And that's a great, beautiful quality to be discerning with our energy and our time and how we choose to live our lives. So yeah, that's what I'll say about judgment.
For you, what's the distinction? What's the difference between judgment and discernment?
Discernment feels clean. And judgment gets a little messy. Yeah. But messiness just happens, so it's okay. But discernment is, for me, a clear choice in a direction of what works for me and what doesn't. Yeah. It's clean. Judgment might be something where, I don't like that because of this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and I want to stay away from it because I'm judging it, versus. So there's a trigger involved in judgment where discernment is just a very clean choice. Yeah.
I love it. This is something I've been geeking out on for years. It's in my book too. I talk about cool. I feel like judgment places value on things. Discernment just says this is for me or this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And then a while back we had a guy named Elliot Hulse on the show, and he gave me this other distinction that I had never considered before, but it's so true. It's like judgment actually happens in the mind, but discernment happens in the body.
Aww,
and like the heart
of
the soul,
that.
right? Because discernment comes from our inner wisdom and our knowing of ourselves.
I love that.
And judgment is just like story hour in your brain.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that a lot.
What's up, beloved listeners? Quick break in the show to remind you that the trust assessment is alive, it is kicking, it is out in the world. And if you have not taken it yet, what exactly are you waiting for, friend? It's over at thetrustassessment.com. We've been receiving amazing feedback from the people who have been taking it since we put it out. And what's really cool is whether your trust in yourself is low, whether it's, medium, mid-level, so-so, or whether you have a lot of trust in yourself, in the reports that are associated with the assessment, you also get to learn a lot about how to apply trust in your life, the specific context for trust in the different areas of your life. There's a lot of information there from my many, many years of study, practice, observation, and experimentation with myself, with students, and with clients. So it's super useful. The resources beyond the free report are super inexpensive. There's an advanced report, there's a workshop. I have a bunch of workshops coming up in March and April. So if this is something that you're curious about, you want to know more about, whether you want to see how you could apply it in your own life, or maybe you have your own clients or your own people in your life. Maybe it's your children and you want to be showing them at an earlier start than you got how to trust themselves. There's some really useful and really valuable information for you within all of the resources that come after you complete that assessment. It takes about 5 minutes, so you need a little bit of time, and it's totally worth it. So again, head on over to thetrustassessment.com. Thank you so much for checking that out. If you love it and you want to share it with your people, we greatly appreciate that as well. And back to the show. So what is super fun for you right now in terms of what you're growing and what you're creating? I know the answer to this. So
yes. I mean, I'm just so excited right now to have revealed this huge blind spot. Like that, it brings so much joy and so excitement into my world because I have so much to clean up. And so I'm really in the space of surrender, like complete surrender to sitting back in the seat of humility and allowing creation to move through me. And it's a very, very, very different way to create. Had you asked me this 2 months ago, I'd been like, well, my book, the e-course, that is not where I'm at right now. I mean, I am working on a book and there are things that are growing, but it is so different that it is a place of like letting this birth through rather than creating from my will.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. For 2018, people are picking their words and all these sorts of things. And for me, it's a surrender to bliss. Yeah. Because the more that I surrender, the more that I hang back, the more that I get out of my own way, I mean, truly, we say those words, but really, and allow creation to move through me, the more bliss and ease and joy and effortlessness comes into my existence. And it's amazing. So I'm so excited to be here, to have a beautiful community and support around me that can call me out and help me shine forward to being a more loving example and channel of human beingness. It feels extraordinary. So I'm really excited about that.
What's funny is I totally thought you were going to say book. Because I do want to know more about your book. And I know it's like you're in like proposal stages and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's essentially, it's the See.Love.Choose book, yeah?
Yeah. I think. Who knows?
Who knows? We'll see. We'll see it on the other side. So that's actually really fun because, of course, we'll have you back when the book is ready.
You.
But
Thank you.
That's really funny. So as of now, it's the See.Love.Choose book.
Yeah, and that's what's been really cool. It's like there's such a deep softening happening around what I think I am creating, and so I'm really excited to see what emerges. There's so much support. I just want to share this because it feels like such a beautiful byproduct of what's going on in my world right now. Like I'm an intuitive, okay? Like I tap in, I get information. It's like, that's what happens, okay? However, through this like incredible, beautiful breakthrough of my heart right now, I am getting so much more guided support in ways that I didn't even know possible. Like the connection that I feel to life and creation has multiplied exponentially, where, these synchronicities that we talk about and these beautiful signs that pop up, it's like, it is so ever active in my world because I literally am like sitting back and letting it come through. So
you and I had dinner last week and we were talking about that, all these little signs and synchronicities, whether it's like angel numbers or the clock says 333 or that license plate. I saw the same kind of license plate 4 times today. And, whatever it is, something I always help my clients see is that, the divine, your intuition, your wild soul, whatever you want to call it, is going to use whatever means necessary to get your attention. And often it's going to be what you will pay attention to.
That's well said. Yeah, girl. Yeah.
And so we were geeking out on, at the end of my life. And I remember, I think the first person who said this on the show was my friend Rochelle Sheik. This was like more than 2 years ago. She's like, if at the end of my life, someone's like, hey, by the way, all that stuff you believed in, it was all made up, I wouldn't even care because it makes it all more enjoyable.
That is entirely true. I feel the same way.
So I want to go back to something you said about getting out of my own way.
Yes.
Because I think the topic of self-sabotage is something that probably anyone listening to this show understands. Mm-hmm. And that can show up in so many different ways. So I'm curious for you how you relate to self-sabotage, how it comes up for your clients and stuff like that, and how you help people navigate that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So again, like just to bring it back to the basics, because I think it becomes so simple when we just bring it back to the basics. Self-sabotage just happens. It happens. We do this. So my relationship to it I've done it for many, many, many years. It's still present in my life, but my relationship to it is more of a place of acceptance because I know that stuff is just going to happen rather than like, oh, dang, I'm self-sabotaging. Look, I'm sabotaging. I'm doing something wrong, because even the idea of self-sabotage feels like we're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But when we sit back in a place of trust that like everything is coming to us just the way that we need it to be for our soul's evolution, for our highest potential, there's no room for self-sabotage in that realm. Like when we take it to like the higher realm of existence. So not to say that it doesn't feel really real in the everyday human life, but my viewpoint on it is more accepting because I recognize that there's a place for it. And maybe what we can speak to self-sabotage is like a beautiful way to let the universe align everything that needs to align so that we're ready to move forward. There's a gift in it all.
Yeah.
Truly.
So if you feel like sharing, you can say no to this if you want to.
Yeah,
what do you have like specific kinds of self-sabotage? Like, are there things that's like kind of like, oh, here I am doing that thing I tend to do whenever I'm feeling this way?
Absolutely. Yes. So for me, like my Achilles heel is romantic relationship and partnership. And the way that I self-sabotage myself is believing that I'm not worthy of being loved, or that I need to be something other than I am in order to receive that love from a partner or a man or this person. And so that has been such a beautiful teacher for me, and a way to like learn to love myself more is all of these like little ways that I think I need to be edited or different or fixed or changed in order to receive love.
I love this point so much. This is one of my big, big, big healings coming out of my relationship last year where, during our time together, my partner was very, very, very critical of me. He was very critical of himself, right? That's kind of like that projection thing that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
And one of the things that happened during that time, this is probably part of why I love to ask people that question about projection, is because I'm like, was I also super critical, or was that like, because what it felt to me was, I'm forgetting the word at the moment. How do you make a sword? Forging. There we go.
Yes.
It felt like it was actually forging me into deeper and deeper self-love. Because it was almost like every time this person would like try to peg me down or whatever, I'd be like, okay, cool. Well, I'm not going to get the love that I'm wanting right now from him. So I might as well go ahead and give it to myself. So that thing was happening. But I love how you call everything a gift or a beautiful teacher. And I hope people are really paying attention to your languaging around all these things to show that like this just is your perspective. Like you pull back, you look in and you're like, okay, where's the gift? Okay, how is this teaching me? How am I learning about that right now? But the part about not folding or bending or changing or fixing or being just the way you are, exactly the way you need to be, it's just, I get that. And I love, and it feels so good.
It does. It does. It does. Listen, like I really do believe on some level, we teach what we need to learn. Yeah. One of my dear, dear, dear friends taught me that a long time ago. And there's a reason that See.Love.Choose, the center of that portion of See.Love.Choose is self-love. It's love. Yeah. Like, oh my God, that has been such a big part of my journey to learn to love myself. So, anything that I've learned from my journey of self-hate towards more self-love, like if that can help another person, like please.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can, because like you said, there's varying degrees, and a theme that's been coming up on the show a lot recently, I feel like in the last couple months, is how, when one area of our life is growing and expanding, often another area of the life is dying, or something's like in progress. Like every single area of your life is never going to all be at the same stage, at the same, I shouldn't say never, rarely.
I love you.
Going to be at the same stage at the same time. And so that's kind of what creates the cool complexity about being a human.
Yes. So I was writing this morning, and this like piece of poetry came through me, and it spoke to this complexities, these contradictions that we live in the human experience, and how I can literally be in these states of such bliss where I feel like the taste, the nectar of the universe, like on my lips, and the oneness and the connection to everything. And then be like in the waves, feeling the back and forth and the push and the pull into the struggle that is just like cracking my heart more open. And all of it exists. It all exists. Like the deepest of the darkness and the brightest of the light. There's room for all of it, because it is all creation.
Yeah. So I don't even think you realize this, but through another one of our conversations, you helped me make a distinction around something that had been a hot button for me for a really long time. And that is unsolicited feedback. So I used to have a free Facebook group, and one of the guidelines was no unsolicited feedback. People need to be able to just share and be seen and not have to worry about getting all kinds of unasked for, unqualified advice, or even unasked for qualified advice.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that I realized over time, this was like kind of a little bit of a blind spot for me, is that when you close yourself off to all feedback, if you're like, then you're just like not open to actually getting some great reflections that you may or may not need that might be useful. Yeah. And so the part that you mentioned earlier about being clean, we were talking about this the other day, right?
Yes.
And this is the distinction. A friend of ours articulated, someone had actually asked, it wasn't unsolicited, someone had asked a friend of ours, hey, are you open to some feedback? And our friend responded, sure, if you can give the feedback in a clean way, without projection, while owning your own experience. And I didn't make the connection until just now that goes for unsolicited feedback too. Because there are times when people will share things with me, but it's so clean. They have no agenda. It's not a power play. They're not trying to like one up or whatever. It's just like good, loving, awesome feedback.
Yeah. Aw. I like that. That's beautiful.
And we also, though, talked about being able to just have like safe relationships with people where you could just share stuff and everyone's not there to coach and process together.
That is exactly true. Because when we get into these worlds, it's easy to be in the constant process, and it is an easy tendency to go there. But let's like have some fun and cheers and dance, and that's what it's for.
So what I've been really enjoying doing towards the end of the interview is asking people some totally seemingly irrelevant questions that have nothing to do with anything we talked about. So do you watch any TV at all?
I do.
What? I want to know what you watch and what's the most recent thing you binged on if you're a binger.
Okay. I mean, I really love like Jimmy Fallon and Ellen.
I love Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah. So that's what I'll watch, like YouTube clips of like Ellen being awesome. And Jimmy Fallon. That's what I watch.
Have you seen his episodes of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld?
Yes. I literally just saw that last night.
Shut up. I rewatched it last night because it's on Netflix now.
I watched that. It's amazing.
I want to know what you love. I want to know if you love the same thing about Jimmy Fallon that I do. Why do you love him?
He's just like playful and like vibrant and light, and just like brings joy places, and just so uber talented. Like I'm just so impressed with his talent. It's just like mind blowing to me that he's that talented and humble.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
I appreciate about Jimmy Fallon, I already like thought he was super funny. I used to watch Saturday Night Live back in the day, but I'll never forget. This is a great clip if you haven't seen it. And anyone listening, if you need something to add to like your go-to like YouTube, I need some joy in my life playlist. Jimmy Fallon recapping the Saturday Night Live 40th anniversary after party. Did you ever see this?
Okay, cool. I have seen that. Yeah, but I feel like I need to rewatch it.
So much joy. It's like this person who still is like so established, so successful. Like you took over the Tonight Show, moved it from the West Coast to the East Coast, and he's like a kid and he can't believe any of it's happening. And to me, like that's a certain kind of humility, right? It's like he can never believe what is happening is happening, and like to me, it reads as genuine. I love that so much.
Yeah, I'm with you, girl.
Are you reading any books right now?
Yes. I'm towards the end of Outrageous Openness by Tosha Silver.
Have you read it before?
No.
Oh my God. That was a pivotal book for me in the fall of 2013 when the seed for Wild Soul Movement had been planted in September. I was reading that book in October and I was like, oh my God, everything is connected.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really the perfect medicine for me right now. I love it.
And I know you spend a lot of time up in the Bay. Have you ever met Tosha Silver?
No, I haven't. But I'm like so grateful that she references the Bay so much in the book because I can picture everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
I think to date, is she still the only person I've ever interviewed live for the podcast?
Awesome.
We had this cool, like her Skype wasn't working and I happened to be in the Bay that weekend and I was like, well, I'm going to be up there. You want to just do it in person? And she was like, sure. It was so cool. We like sat outside on the ground. I set up a camera. There were like trucks going by. We were in some like marina in Berkeley.
That's awesome.
So she's awesome. I love that. How about... Are you a coffee person or a tea person?
Tea.
What kind of tea?
I mean, honestly, right now, what I've been doing a lot of is just like hot water and lemon. That's how I'm starting my days. I really like it. But, like herbal teas, I'll do anything that's hot. But right now, my jam is really hot water and lemon. It feels good.
Are you
cleansing, girl?
What'd you say?
Cleansing.
Yeah. Are you a fan of stand-up comedy?
I am.
Who's your
Dave
favorite?
Chappelle, all the way. Dave Chappelle.
Yes.
Dave Chappelle.
Have we not talked about Dave Chappelle before?
No, but I love him so much.
Have you seen his most recent special on Netflix?
That's what I watch. I watch stand-up. Yes, I do that too. He's amazing. What I love about Dave Chappelle is that he is so like non-PC in a way that is just incredibly insightful. And he brings so much richness and like political, like, we need to talk about this in ways that are so digestible and hilarious. And I also love that he cracks himself up.
I do that all the time. So I really appreciate when other people do that.
He like hits his mic on himself when he's laughing. It's just hilarious.
Yeah. Oh my God. So funny. So the one where he's in LA, in like the last 4 minutes, it pans out to me laughing in the audience.
What?
I get screenshots from people all the time. Like, is this you? And I'm like, it's me. It's so hilarious.
Check that out.
I love that. We should have a night where we watch like reruns of the Chappelle Show.
I am so into that. That sounds like a really lovely evening.
Oh my God, amazing. All right. Well, Miss Monisha, I appreciate you so much. I love literally your clean, your beautiful perspectives, your openness, your humility. Thank you for like demonstrating that and being in that and bringing that energy to the show. I don't think it's something we've really talked about that much in almost 2.5 years now. So thank you so much. We're going to put links in the show notes to everything that we talked about today. And this is episode number 243. So anyone listening can check out Monisha, can check out some of the other things we talked about at untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -243.
I adore you. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me.
Thanks for having. I was going to say thanks for having us, but I had you. That's like at the airport where they're like, "Have a nice trip," and you're like, "You too." You're not going anywhere. It's the first time I've ever done. Oh my God. Amazing. We're not editing that out. It's just what happens. Just like all the other things we talked about in the show. So thank you so much for being here is what I meant to say.
You are so very welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And when my dad passed away, from cancer, I started becoming obsessed with the health side of things. And that kind of led me down this path of like becoming a nutritionist, like learning every single nutritional science fact there is to know. And then realizing that I had developed another breed of my addiction, which was basically just like becoming obsessed with clean eating and health. And I was vegan and gluten-free and sugar-free and everything free. And to the point where I was like, okay, I'm running out of things that I can eat now. And so it was then that I realized that, okay, nutrition isn't the answer here, because I still don't love myself. I'm still in this war with myself. So finding all the nutrition information out didn't help me.